The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Thomas Sennerho. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Dom. It's good to be here.
And Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hello there.
So we are episode 101. So we're in our second century of episodes, and it was a really great episode last week. If you didn't get a chance to listen, we had everyone here, everyone was present, and we were all talking about our favorite tech of all time. And what a great time that was, because we got, I think one of the themes that came out was how often our favorite tech were things that just made our lives better, connected us more with other people, made us more aware of people around us, that sort of thing. So I was really appreciative of that opportunity to have that sort of discussion. So that was a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out if you haven't given that a listen. But today we wanted to have another kind of discussion. This is a question that came in from a listener, Chris, and I'm going to read part of it and then I'll make some further comments. It's kind of a long email, so I'm going to excerpt from it. Chris writes, for the average internet consumer, are there any indicators which would be helpful to vet whether the creators of any site or app actually know what they're doing and have really done their homework in terms of cybersecurity? So this is in reference to, and this is me again, in reference to the whole thing about the Parler social media network that was taken down due to all the political stuff. And what happened after it went down was people got access to all the Parler data, every post, every deleted post, every photo, every private direct message was all obtained various ways, and we can talk a little bit about that in a sec, and put out there, and is being used to, hunt down everyone who had anything to do with the Capitol Hill thing in beginning of January. And so this is concerning because even if you're not engaged in insurrections or whatnot, you don't want your private information out there. And we use all these services for lots of different things. So how can the average user figure out whether any particular service that we decide to use is safe? So that's what we wanted to talk about here. There are some details about the Parler one that's really kind of specific to Parler. What part of that is, Parler apparently had some really bad security and programming practices. I mean, particularly bad.
Yes, they were. I don't think they were one of those knee-jerk response kind of situations where you had a social media fallout where people wanted to use social media to talk freely, and they felt that Facebook wasn't meeting that need, or Twitter wasn't meeting that need, or they were just kind of reacting to the censoring on those websites, and so they went to something else. And so as is the case now with a lot of tech, you have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit that says, well, we can make something like this, because really you can follow a 20-minute tutorial and learn how to make something similar to Facebook that does everything that Facebook does, quote unquote, in getting the posts up. The problem is that Facebook has a lot of built-in protections for people. And so this is a great question, because it really gets to the heart of that. Okay, so I want to move to something that's not as soul-sucking as Facebook or Twitter or one of these, gigantic conglomerations of things. But how do I gauge whether or not it's safe, whether or not it's working the way it's supposed to? So,
yes.
Good question.
And that is a good question. So, and I think the big lesson here is it's really hard. Like you said, it's easy to create something. It's hard to create a good one, a large one.
Exactly.
I mean, I still remember back in the early days of Twitter and Facebook how often they would crash and go down. Like fail whale became part of the lexicon. If the fail whale was the icon that Twitter used when their service wasn't working, and it was so common that they would go down, that people started using fail whale to refer to other things, like, oh, I fail whaled on that. I mean, it was emblematic of unreliable service. So it took them many years and probably several $1 billion each to really get to a point where they can even just stay online. And if you think about how often Facebook just works poorly for you. I mean, anybody who uses Facebook at all knows that Facebook, I mean, you think about it, it's got a good, Lord knows how many billion users now. And if each one is on average posting a post a day, that's 1 billion intersections, a post a day, but every one of their friends has to see that post. I mean, we're talking billions and billions and billions, Sagan's worth of transactions that are going on. That's really hard to do. So yeah, it's easy to start a social media network. It's hard to do it well. I think that's the first lesson.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that there's a history in the past of computing where people go through a process to learn what works for security, what works for backup, and stuff like that. I'm sorry, but I was back in the 60s with computers when they were first starting out, and so there was a whole lot of people that went into how to build these things. Then when we went to the smaller PC networks, all that learning had to be done again by the new people. And now we're seeing it again. All these same lessons have to be learned again. And a small organization doesn't have that staff to learn it as easily.
Yeah. And one of the things is, like, someone like Facebook comes along and they have hundreds, thousands of engineers working on this. And eventually those engineers go off to work for other people. New startups come along and they'll hire people who have the knowledge that they gained working at Facebook or Twitter or whatnot. And so that knowledge disseminates. But yes, it takes time for it to get out there, for these learned lessons to get out there. So that's part of the problem. Now, one of the things that listener Chris asked is, since Parler was kicked off of Amazon's web service and is shopping for a new hosting service, does the panel think that most hosting services are set up to withstand the kind of attention and attacks that they would receive from the motivated hacking crowd upon becoming the host for something like Parler? I think that the key is, it's actually not really about the hosting service. It doesn't really matter what server it sits on. The server is a server. I mean, the one thing a server has to be able to do is withstand brute force denial of service attacks, which is where you have thousands of computers, millions of computers all hitting the server at once, overloading it to the point where it just basically freezes, it shuts down. A host has to be able to withstand that, but that's about it for hosting service.
Well, they also have to be able to be agile in responding to patching of security issues. And a small hosting service may not have the staff to keep up to date on all that stuff.
That's true.
Right. And I think what you're asking is, when you're asking that question, is whether or not the servers themselves are secure for other things that are on them, not particularly for the service itself. So when you're asking about Parler, what you would have to know in that case is you would have to be on that company's servers in some capacity for something else and be able to jump across from one server to another, which, if they even have multiple servers, that should not be something that you could do. So jumping from another host onto Parler's instance on those servers, it's really easy to protect against that, and it should be a very simple thing. From a hacking standpoint, it's much harder to do that knowingly. Like to say, oh, well, I'm going to hack this thing because it's easier so that I can get at that other thing that's on this hosting service also, because you have to know where they were in all the server. You would really have to be an insider at that point to be able to just simply say, okay, well, I'm going to hack everything that this person owns on their servers, and then one of them will allow me to get in. So that's not so much what you have to worry about. The hosting side of things shouldn't affect whether or not Parler can protect its own information. And so that's where we really need to focus, is on that particular company and whether or not they're actually, or that particular website or whatever service you're using, and whether or not they're doing due diligence to make sure that they're protecting their users.
And it's not, in some ways, it's not even just about small companies versus big companies. I mean, how often have we heard about, like, giant corporations that left a database or a file full of sensitive information unprotected on an open directory on a server, or even like an employee, carrying around unencrypted sensitive data on a laptop and losing the laptop, that sort of stuff. So it's just, there's so much data and so many ways for that data to get out there, so many people that are potential holes. It's impossible to close them all. I mean, you do your best, but there's always, someone leaves a door unlocked or a window unlocked. It just happens. But I think it might be useful to kind of define some terms, because when we have a service, say like a Parler or a MeWe or a Facebook, although Facebook's big enough that I want to kind of set that aside here, but like a smaller service, like an app of like Parler or MeWe or one of those other smaller ones, they are not really just they aren't usually programmed from the ground up by the team, every bit of the service. They're usually conglomerations. Like, most sites are usually dependent on a number of third-party service functions or services to do some of the basic stuff, like user authentication, content delivery. Like, here's how we deliver pictures, photos through a content delivery service, that sort of stuff. They often will purchase these abilities, and then the secret sauce is what's specific about this particular site, and that's really what's programmed. And then the engineers for that site, say Parler, have to integrate all these things properly following the actual documentation, which is apparently what didn't happen here. And there's a lot of information out there about how this all happened that is actually, there's thousands of different hackers. Let's call them hackers. Some of them don't deserve the title, but we'll just call them hackers. Hackers out there who claim to know how this all worked, but many of them are wrong or speculating or whatnot. There's only really a handful of people who actually were at the core of what happened with Parler, and it wasn't quite so open and easy. It did take some skills to get in, but yeah, Parler was definitely to blame for this. So that's my understanding. So let's say what can we do if I'm a typical average user and I'm thinking of signing up for a new site, a new service, or downloading this app? How can I make myself as safe as possible from bad security practices, being hacked? What are some suggestions for ways that we can evaluate these things?
I guess part of it is looking to see what types of security that the site provides. Do they provide dual authentication? Do they just do a plain password? Do they do what kind of security do they have for the password entry into the system? Beyond that, looking at reviews by qualified organizations or people to say how good the service appears to be functioning, how responsive it is, how good is the technical response if there's a problem. Does it take a week or 2 or 3 before a problem gets fixed, or is it usually overnight, or within hours? And that's kind of be hard to do on a new application. It's easier to do on an older one that's been around and has got 10,000 downloads as opposed to 5.
Right. I think that actually is. If you're concerned, don't be among the first wave of people.
Yes. Let
other people be the pioneer. Just like in the real pioneer days, those guys went out and then they were killed by the locals, and then more people came after them.
Arrows.
If you're concerned with safety, that's not the place to be, right?
Right. The bleeding edge it's called the bleeding edge for a reason.
Yeah. Well, and I would say too, for that, some of the stuff that I do personally is I will make a bad password to start off with. I will always start with a bad password, and then I will tell them that I forgot my password to see how they handle it. Because a legitimate company will not ever be able to give you the password that you made. If anybody ever gives you the password that you made, do not ever use any website that they have. In fact, you should probably have a non-secure email for that purpose, because they're doing all sorts of bad stuff. Yes,
report them somewhere,
because that's horrible. But even beyond that, if they only ask for your email as a verification of your user to then send you a password reset, that can be a red flag moment, because then anybody can do that. If they can get your email for a moment, then they can request a reset of passwords for anything, and then they have all sorts of stuff about you and for you. They can hijack the email between the two places as well. It's a lot harder to do, but it's possible to kind of hijack the email coming from a particular place to a particular place. Be smart about the way that you do it. Also with emails, it's not necessarily great that they ask you for a big, long email, or that they ask you for an email that includes like all sorts of weird random characters.
Passwords.
Or I'm sorry, passwords. Yeah, a password that includes big random characters or a big, long password. Those two things can be red flags, but they're not necessarily. If you have a website that has a strong password checker, that's good. It's a good start, because a lot of the newer strong password checkers are actually checking for good passwords, not just for whether or not it's long enough or whether or not it's
random,
got weird characters in it. They check it against the database that says, okay, it'll take this long for somebody to just brute force hack this password that you're using, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that does bug me is like when sites ask for like, oh, you can't have more than 6 characters. It's like,
oh, that's awful. That's poor security right there.
Right. And I like banks and like medical places, like, what is wrong with your programmer that he can't handle more than 6 characters? That sort of thing. But yeah, if that's sort of a red flag to me when it limits how long I can make the password, beyond, shorter than a reasonable length. That's a big one. The 2-factor authentication, having multiple ways that they authenticate you is good. When you were talking about Thomas, about the if the only way they get the password to you is by emailing it to you, what other way would they get the password to you if you've forgotten it?
2-factor authentication is really a great example. But if they ask you for an email and then have maybe some questions that they, when you create the account, they generate some questions like, what was your first dog's name? What was the name of the school that you went to? Something like that. Those are good because they're things that you have to know beyond just your email. And so little stuff like that is yes, it's annoying on our end, right? When we forget our passwords, it's annoying to remember, oh, well, how did I spell that? Or where did I put the capitals in that particular word or whatever? But that kind of thing is a step towards better security. And seeing that means that someone has thought about that better step towards security.
In addition, that being able to use your phone number as another verification method, even if it's not the full 2-factor, just the fact is, you could reset it by an email or a phone number or a combination of those and security questions.
As we said before, so you will have a password manager of some sort. Most people need one. Some people don't, because they are capable of keeping secure passwords without a password manager. Those people are rare. Most people need a password manager. But because you have a password manager, when you get those security questions, don't answer them truthfully. Don't write your mother's maiden name. Make up a fake one and put that in the password manager as the unique answer to that question on that site. Don't reuse it across sites. That's makes it insecure. We've talked about that before. So one of the things I would suggest as well is, if you're trying to evaluate a site or service, go to their website, the non-user part of it, the corporate part, and especially if they have a help section, and look up what they say about their own security. How do they secure your data? How do you keep it there? What are they doing? What are their practices? They should, if they're a good service, have some information on that. So that would be one thing.
And they should have their privacy policies about how they protect the textual part of your information, that type of thing too.
And none of this should be in any way secret about a company. If a company is keeping secrets about the way that they're keeping your secrets, they're not keeping your secrets.
Exactly. Yeah. And then another suggestion is you could Google any articles or information about that service. You just like put the name of the service and then security or security. Yes, or a breach, or that sort of thing, and some stuff should come up. We often mention various different sources for regular news about security. Like I always recommend Sophos Naked Security, which is by the Sophos antivirus malware company. They have a security blog where they post articles about breaches and other things like that. Other security focused sites. Steve Gibson is well respected security researcher. He has a podcast on the Twit Network called Security Now, and I think he's got his own site as well.
I follow one called Risky Business.
Okay,
and they're pretty good. They're out of Australia, but they're a great group that does a really good job of covering the news that's out right now.
Malwarebytes also has a nice blog and some forums where people can ask questions, and you can sign up for newsletters, and they come out with very frequent newsletters with suggestions for people on how to be more secure and be more aware of that, not just touting their product.
Right, right. I mean, all of this is a lot. There's a lot to do, a lot to think about if you just want to download a new app on your phone, and you might say, well, why? I'm not going to do all that. And this is the problem. Is it's hard. It's not easy. There is no simple solution. It would be nice if there was a way to quickly and easily evaluate the security and programming practices of these apps and sites, and there isn't. It's complex. This is why, for example, we've had automotive magazines for 40 years doing automotive reviews of cars, because cars are big, complex machines that need professional experts to look at them before we know that they're safe and usable. It's similar. The problem is we have government and industry organizations that can evaluate cars because there's a finite number of cars that are sold. There is a nearly infinite number of apps, and that's a problem.
And again, when you're looking to get an app, you look at the number of people that have gotten it, the rating that they give it, and that type of thing helps as well.
This is true. So, yeah, I mean, there's no easy way. There's no, look at the source code of the page thing. There's nothing like that that's going to be the solution to this.
Now, some security products and browsers build in some type of a validation or reputation check. I know McAfee and a couple of other places had reputation type things that you could turn on, and it would tell you, oh, this is a well-respected site, or this is kind of a not very highly used, maybe a little risky site, and then, hey, don't go there. But that doesn't help you with apps. It only helps you with websites.
That's right. So yeah, there are tools out there for that sort of thing. Some of these malware antivirus tools include site checkers, so that might be useful as well. But they only catch things once it's out there. So if you've already started using the site, before it's revealed, like the Parler thing, you're out of luck on that. But so do what you can, though. Do what you can. Take the practices that you can do and hope for the best that you're not going to get caught. Don't post the illegal things anywhere. Well, I mean,
too personal.
Well, right. The fact is you pretty much assume that anything that you post on a third-party site, on a website or third-party app, could possibly become public. So don't put things there that would embarrass you or get you into trouble. And if you've used things that are encrypted end to end, there are good tools for that, for communication. Like, so you want to have a private messaging system with your spouse or a business partner, there are tools for that. Signal, even iMessage on the iPhone is end-to-end encrypted. But beyond that, I don't post things.
Even with those, you have to be careful, because WhatsApp stores the information on its servers. It's end-to-end encrypted, but it stores the information on its servers. So technically speaking, the same thing.
Someone
applies.
Could unencrypt it, right? If they either give that encrypted data to someone with a big enough computer, or there's a flaw in the encryption protocol. in general, if you put something online, you have to assume that it could potentially get out there. So don't put things online that would embarrass you or get you into trouble. That's the long and short of it. Yeah, so you're taking a risk otherwise.
Yes. If you decide to go skinny dipping, that's, it's always the same situation. You might be caught, right?
You can get caught.
Assume there's a camera around.
Assume that it is public, right?
Right. Exactly. All right. I think that's a good start. If a listener, if you have any further questions on this line, if this raises any further questions, we'd be happy to entertain them, do our best to answer them as we can. And you can send those questions to technology@sqpn.com, and we'll do our best to answer it. All right. So before we move on to our headlines, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Technology, including Father Matt N., Maria S., Joe M., John F., and Paul J. Their generous donations, which are, by the way, because it's tax season, are tax deductible in the U.S. to the fullest extent of the law. Consult your tax professional. SQPN is a 501c3. Your generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And now's a great time to become a StarQuest patron, thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter. When you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. If you become a new patron at $10 a month, after 3 months, our donor will give $30 to StarQuest to support all our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. So if you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now's the time. Visit sqpn.com/give today. All right, our headlines. So this is for you iPhone users out there. We often get accused of having an Apple iOS Mac bias, but it's just a lot of us use these devices, and there's a lot of them out there. There's some non-Apple headlines coming up, but this one is close to my heart because it really, both parts of this next headline really apply to me, so I thought it might apply to others. The next version of iOS 14 coming for your iPhone, it's out in beta now, will help in these trying times we live. Let's all come together and unite to say that we hate having to unlock our iPhones with our mask on. So what it means is, if you have a Face ID capable phone, if you've tried to unlock it, you can't because of the mask is covering your face, and so you have to enter in your password. And if you use a secure password like I do, it's a real pain in the neck having to type it over and over again, especially when it's prone to mistyping. So what Apple has done is if you have an iPhone with Face ID and an Apple Watch, with the Apple Watch, if you're wearing it and it's unlocked, which you expect to be, it will work like it does now with your Mac. So if you have an Apple Watch and a Mac, when you sit down to your Mac and you hit the keyboard, it will unlock the Mac for you. And it will do the same thing for your iPhone now. So if you're at the store and you unlock your phone because you want to look at your shopping list, then you'll unlock it, you'll swipe up, and then you'll feel a tap on your wrist from the watch, and then the phone will unlock. No typing required. Oh, what bliss that will be. I will be in the grocery store and able to consult my list. So that's a big one.
The one warning is that it will do this for any mask, and if it saw your spouse's face and your watch was close enough, it could unlock it.
Right. Anybody. If anybody picks up your phone and it will unlock it, but
if you're close enough to your watch, yeah.
But you will get that tap on your wrist that says
yes, you do.
Somebody unlocked it.
I was going to say that haptic feedback is the thing that sold it for me. I mean, just having that feedback that says, "Oh, my phone's been unlocked." That that's
who's
okay.
touching my phone?
I'm okay with that. Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
That happens.
Sense, right?
That happens here. I'm in the kitchen, and my office is nearby, and suddenly something will tap my wrist, and it says your iMac has unlocked. I'm like, who's in the office? One of the kids bumped the keyboard or something like that. Get away from my computer. So it took a while for them to figure out, because your phone can also unlock your watch. So if you put your watch on first thing in the morning, and then you unlock your phone using Face ID or a password or whatever, the watch becomes unlocked, so you don't have to type anything in. So they had to figure out how to do this without having this loop of recursive loop of them unlocking each other. So it's clever. There are limitations. It won't do Apple Pay, so you can't. If you do Apple Pay on your phone, say, you still have to enter the password manually, which is why
use your Apple Watch.
Oh, right, which is why I use my Apple Watch for
Since
Apple
you got
Pay.
it, yeah, you got it there. So
Right, exactly. There's a couple other things I forget exactly. There's one other security sort of thing. I think for purchases, like in the App Store, still require you to type in a password if you're wearing a mask, that sort of thing. So that's good. I can't wait till that comes. Pat, you have that, right?
Yes, I got the beta where I normally don't, and checked it out, and it works. Now, it is a beta, so there was something about after it did that a few times, there was one point at which my watch froze and I had to reboot it. But so that I understand it's a beta.
Right. And the beta is on both. You
Yes.
have to have the beta on both the watch and the phone, so they're both in
Correct.
beta. Right. The watch betas scare me because there's no way to reinstall if something goes wrong, you have to take it into the store. I don't want to beta my watch.
Yeah, you can't go back to an older version. I think you could probably factory reset it, but you can't go back to an older version on the watch.
Right. So there's something else in the beta that I think is really cool too, which is if you have an Apple Card, the Apple's credit card thing that works with Apple Pay, until now, that card has been tied to one phone, one user, right? So we have an Apple Card, but it's on my phone, and my wife is unable to use it to purchase, which is a pain because if she goes to the mobile down the street or whatever, we don't get that 3% cash back thing, and I prefer to, like most cards, most credit cards, most debit cards, you can have multiple users on it. So iOS 14.5 is, some people have found that it refers to having joint cards. So they figured out a way to have shared use of the card among users in a family, part of the family sharing feature. So that would be good. That way we can jointly make decisions about such things. And so I'm curious though whether it will, because when you use the Apple Card, you get an alert on your phone, and whether both people will be getting those alerts and that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of curious how that will work eventually, because I don't want to be, my phone going crazy all day with, if my wife is making purchases, like,
or she finds out what you bought.
Okay, let me be honest. That's really
no, but that's a big, like, my Amazon account is the Amazon account. So if I want to get something to surprise my wife, I have to figure out how to sneak around the situation, because she gets a notification for it.
That's right. We have the same thing here. Yeah. Now Melanie knows. I have to be careful. She doesn't listen to this podcast.
No, I don't think she does.
She doesn't. So my secret is safe. Anyway, so if you have an Apple Card, that might be coming down the road. Then there might be some other features coming as well. So I'm kind of hoping it's sooner rather than later. And given that it's this particular problem that a lot of people have been having, I think Apple is probably pushing to get this out sooner rather than later. In fact, it might be interesting that how many Apple Watch sales this drives. It could drive some people who don't yet have a watch to get one to use with their phone. That might be the use case. All right, let's move to a different story. This one also comes close to home because we've talked a lot about these problems of these big tech companies doing things that are incomprehensible, locking accounts, putting us in quote unquote Facebook or Twitter jail, and not knowing why or how to get out of it. And so this one, it's like, I think Google is shooting themselves in the foot with this one. I haven't followed up to see if anything has happened further with this. So something, they may have actually fixed this by now, but the headline is that there's this developer called, they're an indie developer with a game called Terraria. I'm not familiar with it, but the company's called Relogic, and they have this very popular game, and they were developing it for Google's streaming gaming service called Stadia. We've talked about Stadia, and they've been working with Google on this and trying to get it out there. They were going to be one of the big apps there, but the founder of the company, or the lead developer of the company, his YouTube, Gmail, and Google accounts were all frozen, locked out for unspecified terms of service violation, and he's been unable to get back into it and hasn't been able to get a straight answer from anybody on what he did wrong or and how to fix it. It's the company's accounts. So Relogic's YouTube account had this terms of service violation, but their YouTube channel is all exclusively trailers for their own games. There's nothing in it that could possibly be a violation. So it's some huge mistake. The big thing is he took him 3 weeks. He's trying to get somebody at Google and YouTube to respond and has been unable to. And finally, just discussed, he said, that's it. We're not doing the Google Stadia game. We're canceling the port. If I don't want to do business with a company like that. What do you think?
Can't argue with him.
Yeah.
Can't argue with him.
It seems reasonable. Yeah.
I think it's a danger here too, because I going into it a little bit, it seems like the developer had a personal account that he kind of then rolled over into the Terraria account.
Yeah.
So that I don't think this was a business account in the way that it's separate from because he talks about losing like his personal items on the Play Store, and so and that makes sense because Terraria was started kind of as a labor of love. It's sort of like a Minecraft kind of game. It's like a 2D version of Minecraft. So if you think about it, instead of walking around in 3D world, you're doing a 2D
side scroller
kind of thing, building, fighting mobs, gathering stuff. And so it started in that same kind of vein where he was programming it out of just being interested in getting into games. It took off like wildfire, got way out of his realm of personal control. And so I think it's one of those things where he had his personal account that he then rolled over into this business account. And now he's lost a bunch of his personal stuff just because it was the business stuff kind of attached to it, which is awful. But a lesson for people: when your business takes off, make sure that you make a business account for it. And if you have any followers, make sure that you roll them over early so that you don't have to do it with millions of followers later when a TOS takes your stuff down and you're stuck without your things.
It's not easy to convert an account to a business account.
You have to create a new one.
It's really not. Yeah.
Yeah. I've run into that. Yeah.
And that's another thing that's really awful for, I mean, they should be, YouTube needs to be a lot more, and Google in general needs to be a lot more cooperative in life, the way that people live life, right? Where they are doing things that are kind of outside of this small little box that says, well, this is my business stuff and this is my not business stuff, because sometimes it wasn't my business stuff, but now I'm making $1 million doing it.
Right.
So it needs to be my business stuff all of a sudden. And that's, there's another one of the people that I follow on YouTube that's a musician, and he does music courses, was worried about the same kind of thing, where he's got this back catalog of videos. It's his personal website that he's putting, or his personal YouTube page that he's putting things on. And he's monetized it, but he got a copyright strike because what he does is he plays music and talks about the music in order to teach people about it. And it's Rick Beato. If anybody's interested, he does rants about this stuff, so you can get the whole backstory if you want to hear it directly from him. But he'll play parts of the song, and he monetizes those videos because that you monetize everything on your YouTube channel. And the artists can go on and flag them, and then they get the proceeds from that particular video. And he doesn't care. He's like, I'm not going to fight that. That's their right to go on and say that I want that. But what he does care about is like a copyright strike, which is this terms of service violation kind of thing that's going on, where not only did the artist go on and say, okay, I want all the money from that video, but I also want that video taken down, and I want to strike them for copyright, saying that they violated your terms of service and are playing my work as if it was their own. And you only get 3 of those, and that's it. And then you lose your account. Like, you just lose it. There's nothing you can do about it. And same kind of thing here, where it's just like this vague, well, you violated terms of service, you're gone.
That's the thing that drives me crazy, is there's no explanation, no clear, there's no requirement that they provide a clear delineation of what you did wrong, what you can do wrong. Even there's no listing of these are all the things you could possibly do wrong that you have to steer clear of. And there's
arbitration.
and there's no appeal. There's no human being to talk to at YouTube. YouTube and Google don't have human customer support at all. It's all bots and whatnot. And there's no way to appeal this. So I talked about this a few weeks ago on the show, and it's terrible. This may be a case where government intervention is required in order for people to have certain rights protected, certain of their because people are having, for example, their own compositions, their own music that they've composed, created. It's their own property, and then some company comes in and says, "Oh, that's ours," and it's a copyright strike, and they have no recourse to say, "No, this is mine." They have no opportunity to do that. It's wrong. It is so wrong, and this is an example of that.
And the challenge there too is that a lot of this stuff is being driven more and more by algorithms, where an algorithm interprets a piece of music and says, this is the way the music sounds. And then it goes and listens to music. And I mean, there's only so many notes. They can only be put together in so many ways. Eventually, you're going to run foul of some part of some song. And if a computer isn't trained well, it's going to flag that for a copyright. And the thing is that Google doesn't care about the truth in these matters. Google cares about Google's bottom line. And it shows when you have stuff like this, where there's no way to go say, well, what happened? I'll take the video down. I don't care. I don't want to get into this fight. I don't want to lose my account for any period of time. But they won't tell you what video it was. They won't tell you, what part of the video was a violation. Nothing. They don't have to do any of that, because all they want to do is protect their bottom line, and they don't want to be taken to court for a copyright strike for putting up this thing that they didn't put up. To be fair, they are providing this opportunity for people to put things up, but they can be taken to court for it. So what they're doing is just applying the hammer way too broadly to anything that gets a terms of service violation like this, and just shutting it down and getting rid of it.
Right. So, well, hopefully something will happen, and hopefully this guy gets his account back. But maybe this will affect Google's, part of Google's bottom line. A game that they wanted for their service is no longer being made for them. Maybe this guy is actually someone who can affect Google in some small way, their bottom line. That might be nice.
Terraria is pretty big. To be fair, Terraria is probably near as big as Minecraft. Not as big as Minecraft, but near it in that perspective. So.
Good. Maybe someone at Google's Stadia team will go, "Hey, YouTube,
right?
Smarten up. Fix this guy's account.
You're losing us money."
Yes. Yeah. So this next headline, Thomas, is from your neck of the woods.
It is right across the water.
A hacker, and we use that term advisedly, a hacker gained access to a water treatment plant in Oldsmar, Florida, and increased the sodium hydroxide levels to a dangerous level, which was, thankfully, someone was watching as this happened and were able to immediately reduce the level back to normal. So apparently what happened was the water treatment plant, there was an operator. Someone had remotely accessed the computer system, which is not unusual. They have a remote access software on it, and sometimes various people who, employees, have to access it remotely to troubleshoot things. And so he saw someone go in, and then they adjust the amount of sodium hydroxide in the water from 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per million, which is potentially dangerous. Sodium hydroxide is lye, basically, which is a dangerous. It's what's in Drano. So yeah, if that's in your water, that's bad. So, or at least at those levels, it's bad. The operator managed to shut down the remote access software completely and reduce the levels back to their normal amount. FBI, Secret Service, and others are investigating. But this is scary that, there's a lot of our infrastructure that is potentially vulnerable to somebody.
I want to say kudos to the Oldsmar water treatment plant, because this is a 5-day-old case, and they are putting it in the news already. And
Wow.
that, to me, that says so much about
Transparency.
the transparency, the confidence in your people, the confidence in your system. That's huge. That is a really, really big deal. And this doesn't happen because there are big companies that they'll find out about something like this and they'll sit on it for 6 months, a year, until they have all of the details and are able to say every little bit. And they could have been doing stuff to secure people's passwords, everything that's in their system, but they didn't because they didn't want the bad optics. This is a fantastic job on them for being out there and being in front of this kind of thing.
Right. Transparency and accountability. I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, this happened on the 5th, and they were, February 5th, and it was February 8th that they had the press conference with the FBI and the Secret Service and the sheriff. So that's transparency, like you said. That is great. I mean, it's not great that it got hacked. And it's really concerning that someone was that whatever remote access software they were using had a vulnerability. So not sure the software itself, but perhaps the social engineering to get passwords and user names or something. And so somebody was able to get in. But, a lot of our infrastructure is vulnerable. And it's the only thing that's surprising is that it doesn't happen more often.
This doesn't happen more often. Yeah.
or if it does happen, maybe not so surprising that they don't tell us about it.
They don't tell us, but that's the other thing that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of people don't know that these systems are running sometimes very, very old equipment. A lot of times because they wrote a piece of software that works for all of the equipment that's running inside of these facilities. And to update that software to a more secure system, they would have to then go and replace all of the equipment, or go in and reprogram on a very low level all of the equipment, and that's hard to do. It's very, very costly. So when you're running margins, it's a public water treatment plant. When you're running as low margins as they are, you can't afford to do that kind of thing. So you make what you have as secure as possible, and you put good people on it that are recognizing the issue and taking care of it as quickly as they can.
Our next headline is really an example of this difficulty. This is a good one. In China, a railroad system for the city of, I forget what the city was, in Dalian Liaoning. Sorry, I said it all. It's terrible pronunciation, but the railroad in this city in China was shut down for 16 hours because the system was dependent on Adobe Flash. And when Flash went offline, we talked about this before, as of the end of December 31st, 2020, or whatever it was January 12th, there was the code in Flash that shut it down because it's not secure, not safe, and shouldn't be run by anybody anymore. It brought the entire railroad system in the city, the subway system in the city, to a halt. And it was only restored, this is even better, when they installed a pirated copy of Adobe Flash that allowed them to get back up and running. This is bad. That's just really bad all around.
It is. It is. I love how they refer to it as the Y2K21.
Right.
And it's so accurate too, because really you're talking about older infrastructure that's running an older, out of date system, and ample warning. Right, there was plenty of warning that Flash was going to be out, but the problem is that you get so used to running stuff sometimes that you're not digging back through every single dependency that your software has, and so it just runs, and you don't really think about what it's running, and you probably kind of, if you've inherited this from 3 generations of people that have been using it, there are 3 other people that built it before you, and you inherited it. It kind of works, and you're being charged with improving it. You don't have time to go back through and read every single thing that they wrote. You just kind of assume, and you would never think, why on earth is Flash responsible for any part
of running
a train system? But there you go.
Well, this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right?
I did also see that there was a hospital in England, or I think it was a medical facility of some sort, that also had a problem with Flash. And what they ended up doing was creating their own browser that would run Flash inside the browser. But I couldn't find the article right before the show to to get the
I have
exact details. Do you?
Well, I have something that's actually, it's not a hospital in England. This one is the South African Revenue Service, which is their equivalent of the IRS, had to create their own custom web browser to re-enable Flash support.
Okay, so I'm totally the wrong part of the world, even, but I remembered that something happened.
Well, I mean, it could be also a hospital in England too, but yeah, they had to rather than port their existing website from Flash to HTML-based web forms. Instead, they created their own browser that could run Flash. Would you run a web browser given to you by the federal government? No, I
have
not.
A personal story about Flash.
Okay.
I was helping a client who is a driver's training instructor, and he had to be recertified. And so it was like supposed to be a 4-hour class, which has taken him about 12 hours now. But at any rate, at some point, he was trying to run it, and it would not let him see a video because it was Flash.
It was Flash.
So I worked with him, and first it was the instructor. The company said, "Oh, well, you have to run it on a computer because your iPad can't run Flash." And I said, "Big news! Neither can his computer
anymore."
So even as we spoke over a 5-day period, they had to go in and change out the videos so they weren't Flash anymore. But now he could finish the class, and he told me today he finished it. So that's the very personal
You did work
failing.
for a whole lot of people.
Yes, I did.
It was more than just him had that problem.
Yeah.
So there is a bit, I noticed as I was looking at that headline about the South Africa, there was a link to a follow-up on the Oldsmar incident. So the FBI has just today sent out a notice, a warning about using out-of-date Windows 7 systems, poor passwords, and TeamViewer, which is the desktop sharing software. Those three things apparently were the point of entry for the water treatment plant network. So
the perfect storm of unsupported and out-of-date software.
Yes, that's just like you're saying. So anyway, in China, the reason that the Flash was so important for the railroad was the switching station needed to the railroad's timetables on the switching station were done through a browser-based Flash interface. So that's where it was. So because they couldn't switch anything, they had to the whole network just shuts down. And they tried to restore from backups, but that didn't actually help.
Well, it's interesting because Flash is a big deal. It's really easy. It was really easy to program in, and it was great for user interfaces, right? That's kind of what you did, was you used Flash for user interfaces. And again, these are like those dusty cobwebs parts of your code that if you don't go back through and look at every once in a while, you're not going to find out, oh wait, why are we using Flash and not HTML5? And it's a very simple port. Like it's a piece of cake, but it's one of those things too that I can see is like if you're the new programmer hired on to handle this thing, it's not flashy. It's not going to speed anything up, and
yeah, it works. Don't mess with it.
Exactly. And unless something like this happens, you're not going to get any traction for why it's a return on investment for you to spend 60 hours trying to rework this thing or to take it down for a day just to be able to make it into the new version. So
yep.
Yeah.
So I do love this. The resolution though is that they're either going to their options are in some unspecified Microsoft-based setup or an archived pirated version of Flash without the time bomb disabling code in it, which is what they ended up doing. And I'm sure Adobe is not happy about that out there, but it's what are you going to do?
When I had heard some report saying that because the word had gone out to so many people in the rest of the world, but China keeps a real tight
control on the internet.
Control on incoming news. So that's why they probably weren't aware of it.
That's right.
It's possible.
Yeah. All right. So that's our headlines this week. So we'll have more headlines of the weird and wonderful ways of the internet next week on the show. But before we end, of course, it's our picks of the week. And so, Pat, I'm going to ask you for your pick this week.
Well, I chose something that I think we've had others of this type before. but I had gotten a blood pressure monitoring device that is Bluetooth connected with its own little app. And my daughter had just gotten this. One of my other daughters had just gotten this one a couple weeks ago, and she was so excited because she can have all of her stuff that's recorded, and she can just show it to her doctor. She doesn't have to.
Oh, that's awesome.
So then, I exported one today, and I could export and print it and take it with me if I wanted. So, at any rate, it's a nice one. It was Omron. I did some research to see which ones got good reviews, and it's an Omron 10 series, and that'll be in the notes.
Okay, so Omron 10 series upper arm blood pressure monitor.
Right, and it's got the preformed cuff on it, so it's just not this floppy thing that you've got to get adjusted. It's already formed. You just slide it on your arm, position it, and so you don't have to worry about. I've got an older blood pressure monitor that the D-ring keeps slipping and then cramping and causing a poor take on the blood pressure reading. So that's why I got this particular one.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thomas, what's your pick this week?
Alrighty, so anybody who's listened to the show for any length of time knows that I am all about free and cheap, but I am about to recommend a $20 set of earbuds that is absolutely fantastic. I've bought 3 of them, so they have to be good. It's this company called Klim, I think, Klim. I think they make motorcycle gear. That's like when you go and look them up, you'll see they have motorcycle gloves, motorcycle jackets, pants, the whole 9 yards. We got these at the school that I was working at, and they just to use because they have a microphone on them that has a volume control, and so you can turn up and down what you're hearing in the headphones with the volume control on the slider here, and it's got a sideways jack to go into things, so it doesn't fit straight into something. It kind of fits at an angle. It's at a 90-degree angle, so that when you plug it in, it works. It comes in a little case that has 5 different earbud options for you. So it's got a silicone set, it's got 2 different foam sets, and then 2 different kind of rubbery ear stopper sets. And they're very comfortable. I have sensitive skin, so they irritated my skin at first, but they are fine now. At first, it was a little bit of an irritation, but the foam ones that I'm using, after I got used to them, though, they're fine. They don't bother me at all anymore. They fit my ear great, but here's the seller. This is the thing that you're gonna pay $20 for, right? It's ingenious and wonderful. They have magnets on them on the outsides. And at first I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I can just hang it on my microphone stand. So I'll just put it on my microphone stand. They hang there. Great. But when you put these things together, when you take them off, they snap together. And then when you stick them in your pocket and you pull them back out, they can't tie knots.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
They can't tangle.
Don't get tangled. That's the thing that sells it for me. Right there, that was worth every penny that I've spent on these things.
That's good.
Are those the ones you're wearing right now?
They're the ones that I'm wearing right now.
Right.
Yes.
Awesome. That is cool. The good ones. I was going through headphones at a rapid pace because my son listens to audiobooks all day long, and he has the phone in his pocket and he catches the headphones things. So I finally had to get him wireless headphones, but those look good. The reason I say that is he broke my pair of Bluetooth headphones. So I'm like, now I have to replace them. So I might replace them with those.
Well, see, and I always used to get the dollar pairs because I was like, my kids are going to take them, they're going to get broken, whatever. But I got these and I just fell in love with them, and so I had to go get my own set of them. And then I just bought my daughter a set of them too. So
awesome.
Cool.
So my pick this week stems from a particular problem I had, which is I have a 2020 MacBook, not an M1, the last of the Intels, because that's my luck, and it's USB charge. It charges via USB cable, right? It's the USB-C out. And a few weeks ago, my wife Melanie was using the office all day on a Saturday she was giving a talk at a conference, and so I had my MacBook in the other room, and I was trying to get some stuff done, and of course the battery's starting to run out, but I realized my power cable for this, the charger for this, is under my desk, and I'm not gonna crawl under the desk while she's doing her talk. So I'm like, oh, I've got USB-C power chargers all over the place. I could not find one in my house that provided enough power. Even the ones that I have for the iPad, just not enough power. None of them would charge it. So I finally said, okay, I have to get one. So I got one that has 100 watts, and I got a long cable to go with it, which is the other part of that, is the 10-foot braided cable, USB-C cable. So the ones I got were both from Aukey, Aukey. And so it's the MacBook Pro 100-watt USB-C charger with gallium arsenide fast technology, power delivery, PD charger. So it charges faster. It pushes more power through. They sell them in a 61 watt and 100 watt. The 61 watt might have been enough, but the 100 watt is definitely plenty. So I got that one. It's only $40. I mean, that's I say only because it used to be if you wanted to get a charger for your MacBook, it was $100 or $80. It was a lot more. So that's nice. It's compact, which is also nice. And then the cable was $14 for a 10-foot braided cable, which is good too. So I'll have links to both of those in the show notes. And now I have a second set. I always with my laptops have at least 2 chargers. One that stays in the bag with the laptop, and one that stays at my desk. When I was working in 2 places and bringing the laptop back and forth, I had 3. One at each desk and one that stayed in the bag, and that way it was always safe. So, but at this price, that's a doable thing. All right, I think that does it for us for now. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can let us know any of what you have to say by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion, all the headlines, and our picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you can, we really appreciate it. It really, really helps a lot. If you could go to Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast directories where you get your podcast from and write a review, a nice 5-star review. The reason that helps is not just because it makes us feel good, even though it does, is because when a podcast gets reviews, it gets pushed up into the rankings and the recommendation engine, and people looking for this sort of content will then see it. So that's the number one way we get new listeners, besides you personally recommending it to other people, which we do greatly appreciate. So if you could do that, we would love that. So until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Always glad to be here. See you next time.
And Thomas Ennerho, thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.